Hello and welcome back to Zenin Fanfics. Today we're starting part 5 of an exciting news series. What if Deku had blood manipulation quirk? If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more content. The story we're featuring is written by Judas Magnus 1994 on archiveofourown.org. You can find all the relevant links in the description, so be sure to check out the author's profile and say hello. Now let's dive into the story. Endeavor's new appointment as the principal of UA received a lukewarm reception from part of the students. Some thought he could turn around the situation UA was facing thanks to Nizu's poorly thought-out decisions. But a minority that was recently gaining traction thought that the fact that Shoto Todoroki refused to use his fire no matter what was a red flag that shouldn't be ignored. As for Izuku, he was quite neutral on the subject. He preferred to wait for a little to see how Endeavor performed in his role before casting any judgment on him. But he was part of the second group that considered Shoto Todoroki's refusal to use the fire of his quirk for some reason an important clue that shouldn't be ignored. The first week after the summer was as normal as it could be, with the students of UA chatting with each other about how their summer went for them as they commented on the last stroke of bad luck that the hero course of the first year faced, and how the hero that was in the first year of the general course saved the day alongside All Might and his successor. Izuku was becoming a source of gossip among students in UA, as he was now a hero despite the fact that he abandoned the hero course of UA and decided to take an exam to get the license as a hero instead of doing what everyone else did to become a hero. But considering that the hero course that he was started to crumble to the point that a lot of people of other courses considered the whole class 1A a lost cause, then maybe Izuku did the right thing. Izuku preferred to be left alone to his own devices while he was in school, but it was not like he was that antisocial. Mirio and his friends, Kinoko, and other students of Class 1B normally sat at his table during lunch to ask his opinion about some topics or to have a casual conversation. For example, the Provisional Hero License exam was not only going to happen soon, but for some reason, Endeavor was pushing both hero courses of the first year to take that exam. So, you want for me to say how the exam I took to get the hero license when in case something I did could help you to prepare for that exam? Izuku said. Kinoko and some other students of Class 1B decided to ask about Izuku's experience with that exam in case something about what he did could help them. Yeah, I know that is kind of a shot in the dark, but maybe we could prepare better for the exam for the provisional license if we had an idea about how a similar exam is done. Kinoko said. I see. And you were right, any kind of information is better than none, but maybe you should ask someone from the third year or something. Izuku said. Yeah, that sounds reasonable, but it's not like we know someone from the third year, so we could ask them. Itsukakendo said. And as she said that, Mirio Togata and his two friends reached Izuku and asked how he was doing. Good timing, Izuku said. He saw Mirio's confused face and explained what was going on. I see, Mirio said as he put his tray on the table. He heard what the students of 1B were asking, and he saw no real problem sharing what he had to deal with during the provisional license exam of the past year. Be warned, though, aside from the written exam, the next event is never the same from exam to exam from what I heard. Mirio said. Thank you, this helps a lot. Reiko Yanagi said. But I don't get it. Why the new principal is insisting on having the first years to take that test. No offense to you people, but I think that the fact that this exam is done only for second and third years on the heroic course for a reason. In the first year, you were taught the basics. The exam that I did a couple of months ago had things that none of you people had seen yet, Izuku said. We don't know either, but the only thing we can do is to rise to the challenge and to pass that exam. Setsuna Tokage said. Okay then, I guess that I can lend you my help somewhat as long as I am in school. Izuku said. That got the girls and the others fired up. Thank you, Midoriya. Tetsu said. But I am afraid that I can't really help you anymore with your quirks. But maybe I could do something about the written exam. Izuku said. What do you have in mind? Nijire Hado asked, quite curious about what the new, unofficial member of the Big Three of UA had to say. Well, Izuku then decided to explain his plan. The next days before the Provisional Hero License exam, some of the teachers and students of other courses saw how the table that Izuku used to pick to eat in peace, and a couple of those tables at his side were fully occupied by almost all the students of Class 1B and a couple of them of Class 1C. The reason? Izuku's idea of making written exams that contained problems of the heroic variety, like those that he had to resolve in his own exam and those that were taught to the students of the third year, was his way to help the students of Class 1B to prepare for their incoming exam. Some of the students of Class 1C listened to what Izuku wanted to do, and Izuku decided to indulge them by allowing them to participate in that fake exam. Mirio and his friends decided to help by playing the roles of proctors and made sure that the participants of this exam didn't cheat. The faculty of UA was quite surprised and somewhat terrified in a way of how not only Izuku had decided to do that to prepare the students of Class 1B for that exam, but also that he was surprisingly competent at playing the role of a teacher and examinator, as he not only corrected those exams quickly enough, but also decided to explain the reasoning about why their answer to those problems was right or wrong. Those members of the faculty that weren't Endeavor did catch on about how Izuku was frighteningly good at teaching people how to use their quirks and make them stronger through appropriate training. And now that Endeavor saw that side of Izuku, then he was maybe starting to understand why Nizu put Izuku's name in that list as a potential substitute for him in case that Nizu retired. The students of Class 1A were minding their own business as they focused on themselves and their own preparations, or the lack of them, as none of them had any real idea about what to do to prepare for that incoming exam, and a lot of them felt that they weren't prepared at all for what was coming to them. Eraserhead's teachings, or lack of them, left the remaining students of Class 1 not only unprepared but also damaged their ability to trust the other teachers, and even themselves, even if they were trying to figure out things on their own. As they had been doing since the beginning of the year, they never managed to get their footing to start making any decent progress. They were envious of Izuku in a way, as he did in a way did things in his own way. But while they found failure after failure, Izuku was instead finding a way to succeed and move forward with his dreams of being a hero. The damage done by Eraserhead's interpretation of freestyle teachings to the Class 1A had been quite severe, and not even Midnight taking over Eraserhead and Endeavor's decision to force the hero course to follow the standard of other hero schools to teach their students was able to start to fix the damage that the Class 1A was enduring. Eraserhead's fake expulsion scare, alongside not removing that black mark from their records, damaged the trust of those past students of Eraserhead. And even if they managed to graduate, none of them had a positive opinion of UA at all and focused only on their careers, as that black mark was hanging around their necks as a mark of shame that damaged their chances of a normal future outside heroics. That hardening that those previous students of Eraserhead had endured didn't happen to Class 1A, but they had to see how much of a hypocrite the man was when Eraserhead refused to act as a teacher for them, while they were forced to watch how Shinso got the preferential treatment in front of them. The whole seeing how they were not worthy of the attention of their homeroom teacher, while also seeing how the same kid that they believed was lesser than them, because he was quirkless in those moments, weren't doing them any favors, and the only thing that could happen is that they either touch rock bottom or someone managed to step up to the plate and help to fix that mess. But who would be the one that would rise to that call? A couple of days before the provisional hero license exam was celebrated, Izuku was called to the principal's office. This was the first time that he was face-to-face with the man himself, as the last time that they were in the same area. Izuku was too busy saving people's lives near the ambulances outside that circle of fire, as Endeavor was killing Nomus. "Is something that you need from me, Principal Todoroki?" Izuku said, surprised to see the infamous and imposing Endeavor in an orange suit, as he saw how some of those flames that occasionally danced around the suit didn't burn the suit at all. Izuku considered that maybe Endeavor commissioned that suit from the same place that he bought his. "Midoriya, in a normal situation, I wouldn't have any reason to intervene. But considering that you are still a student in UA and would be in class during the hours that the Provisional Hero License exam is being done, the HPSC wishes for me to let you skip class for that day, so you could participate on Provisional Hero License exam as a hero that would lend his support during the last event of the license exam," Endeavor said. He had been under the order of the HPSC to make that offer to Izuku, as he hadn't replied to the direct offer that they had made to him through the Hero Network. They considered that the fact that Izuku was still a student in UA despite having the hero license was why he refused to accept that offer, and they decided to cut the middleman, even if that meant to make Izuku suspicious of Endeavor. "I see," Izuku simply said. This was quite weird, and in a way made him somewhat wary of the man. But considering his luck and how things had gone for him, then Izuku decided to not drag his feet that much, and after listening to Endeavor's sales pitch to get him to lend his help to the HPSC during their exam, Izuku decided to just go along with it in the end. All right then, that is a strange request, but I will accept it as long as you allow me to skip that day of class with no issues. Izuku said. Okay then, but are you sure about that? Endeavor said as those words caught Endeavor by surprise. He expected in a way for Izuku to stand his ground and not really be that willing to accept to do that because it looked like an imposition from the HPSC. Let's be real. I either find myself going head first into trouble without knowing it, or that trouble looks for me when I am minding my business doing something else. At this point, I might as well accept that if one particular issue like this is going to pop up to the point that someone else has to be involved to inform me about it, then might as well accept that I am not dodging that bullet and that I would do better bracing myself for trouble and move to deal with it over trying to avoid it, Izuku said with a tired sight, thinking about how that statement had been born from Izuku's experiences after he abandoned the hero course. Because dodging the sports festival to then go head first into an encounter with Stain when he went to Hosa to buy a book and similar situations that had been happening to him after that day made him believe that he was going one way or another to be involved in a situation. And if that potential situation was trying to get on his face, then he should just get it over with. I see. Endeavor simply said, somewhat aware of Izuku's knack of getting involved in trouble almost everywhere that he went, and considered that Izuku's lack of resistance came from the fact that Izuku was now almost expecting something to go wrong during the provisional hero license exam, and that he might as well to be there to try to deal with that potential trouble. Yeah, if there is nothing else that we need to discuss, then I would leave you be, Principal Todoroki, Izuku said while bowing a little, and then he left the office. It was clear to Izuku that Endeavor had some kind of dealing with the HPSC, as he knew that Endeavor wasn't the kind of person who would act like that in order to help the HPSC goals without any real benefit for himself, unless the HPSC was having something on him. Izuku decided to make a note about that possible connection to try to lock into it later, but now he had other things to deal with, like the fact that he was going to participate in the provisional hero license exam on the side of the HPSC, and not as a participant. He didn't know what role the HPSC had in mind for him to take in that test, but he had no real hope that it was going to be a pleasant time. Izuku was now dressed in his white suit inside the Takoba National Stadium, hanging around the waiting area for the heroes and teachers, as he saw how all the kids of the hero course of other hero schools around the country and those of UA hero course were now taking the written test. Izuku saw that some of those kids were panicking, and he could understand that. He had taken a similar test months ago, and it was quite a nerve-wracking experience, even if he wasn't surrounded by so many people. He then saw that Kinoko and her classmates had actually finished the exam quite earlier than the other participants, but there was no trace of fear or hesitation in their faces as they turned their exams in when they were done and then got out of the examination area. Midoriya, what are you doing here? Kinoko asked when she saw that Izuku was in that waiting room. She and the others were now dressed in their hero costumes, and they didn't expect him to be there as he had his hero license already. Well, if you must know, the HPSC wants me to lend a hand in this exam for some reason. Izuku said, I hope that we don't have to fight you. Setsuna said. At this point, Izuku had been in a lot of incidents dealing with villains and had a lot of practical experience in combat in comparison to them, even if he was of the same age. Don't worry, I can't reveal to you what is my role in this exam, but I can assure you that you will not fight me to pass. After all, they want for this test to be passable, Izuku said in a joking manner. Yeah, passable, maybe that is why the test was easier than I expected. Itsuka said. Huh? Izuku said. Well, you did help us to prepare for this test by making us to make up fake exams with heroic situations that is taught in the second and third year, and maybe that is why it felt easier to us. But those questions were almost similar to that first test that you make us do after we asked for you help, Ibra Shiozaki said. In what regard? Those questions were far more simplified than the ones that you made us answer, and those scenarios were also simplistic. It's almost like the exam was made easier or something like that, Kinoko said. I see. Well, at least you deal with the first part now, so you should rest a little before the results are given, Izuku said, some confused to hear that the questions that Kinoko and her classmates had to resolve were easier than he anticipated. He saw how Kinoko and the others decided to take a break for a while, and as Izuku turned his back to meet with the heroes who were also part of the exam, He saw that one of the heroes who came alongside some students of one of the hero schools around Japan was looking at him with some resentment. That woman had green hair, and while Izuku wasn't aware of why she looked at him like that, Izuku didn't care at all about her reason for looking at him like he had committed an unforgivable crime. He had better things to do than to care about that, but he would check on the hero database later about who she was and what her problem was with him. The next part of the exam after the written test was a competition in which the examinees had to place 3 targets or weak points on their bodies. They had to put the targets anywhere on their body they wanted, as long as it was in an exposed area, so armpits and the bottoms of their feet were off limits. Each examinee is also given 6 orange balls. A target will light up red if it's hit by one of the balls. If all 3 targets are hit by a ball, that student is eliminated. At least that was what was supposed to be, but Izuku saw that the surprisingly high amount of those participants that had passed the written test was high enough that there weren't enough targets and balls for everyone. Because of the 1,540 participants that were there today, 1,100 had passed the written test, and that massive number had somewhat caught them by surprise. The HPSC did in fact lower the difficulty of the written test in order to get more people to pass that first part of the test, as it was almost normal for up to a 50% of participants to pass. But it appeared that they made things a little too easier, and that meant that all the equipment that they had prepared for 750 participants was not enough for all those participants. But they decided to improvise a little and decided to just split those 1,100 participants into 2 smaller groups and decided to fit those groups in a way that those that had the flashiest quirks had an easier time with weaker opponents. That meant that they slotted Class 1A in the group of 550 participants that had weaker quirks in order to give them better chances to pass their incoming test without having to worry about the infamous UA crushing. That in theory was a good plan, but the thing about the UA crushing was that all that preparation that those students did to knock down the students of the hero course in UA were still useful regardless of the situation. So when they put Class 1A in one group and Class 1B in another, they unknowingly reduced the chances of Class 1A to pass at all. Some time had passed since the sports festival in UA, and while it was obvious to expect that the students of UA had experienced some growth since those days, Class 1A misfortunes not only reduced their numbers, but also somewhat stunned their growth. The training on the summer camp that they did to strengthen their quirks may have allowed them to improve somewhat, but they were on par with those of Class 1B when they had finished preparing themselves to take the final exam against the teachers. That meant that when the students of Class 1A were on that field, Todoroki's opening act was to default on the ice side of his quirk to freeze everything around him. A tactic that wasn't as useful as it appeared to be, as those students with weak quirks had joined forces to counter his unique mean of offensive, and since Todoroki still refused to use his fire, then his attempts to still use his ice even when it was clear that it was not going to work ended with him having to be taken out of the facilities, and then he was moved to a hospital nearby because he almost froze himself to death. Shoto, Todoroki, and half of Class 1 ended up being taken out by the others, and while the girls and some lucky guys as Tenya managed to pull through. The way that Todoroki conducted himself wasn't a good showing from UA, and in a way ruined the plan of the HPSC to start washing up the image of UA after their recent public disasters. Maybe the HPSC, now that they had an inside agent inside UA, should have first looked at how the Class 1A was faring for real before trying to push them to take this test. At least there was a positive outcome for those students in the second year of the hero course, in Class 1B, as they passed the competition with barely a couple of hiccups, and after 30 minutes to rest that was given to prepare the last part of the event. The remaining 500 participants were told to prepare themselves for their last test to prove if they were worthy of getting the provisional license to be a hero. When Kinoko and the other participants entered back into the area where they had been doing the exam, they saw how some explosions started out of nowhere, and then all the buildings around them started to collapse. What is going on? Is this part of the exam? What should we do? The voices of concern and confusion of those students were filling the air, and Kinoko saw how Izuku then appeared in front of them to explain what was going on. All right, everybody, this is part of the exam, so calm down and listen to what I have to say, Izuku said. He had been briefed about what was he supposed to do, and while he had no problem playing the role of a rescue hero managing a group of sidekicks during a disaster, he was somewhat concerned about the fact that some of the heroes that were chosen to play the villains weren't the kind of heroes that were willing to hold back. This second part of the exam consists of the rescue of some individuals who had been injured by those explosions and are trapped inside those buildings or in the streets. You will be graduated based on your performance while you rescue those individuals and how you carry yourselves during the whole event. I am also allowed to instantly fail any of you in case the situation calls for it. But as long as you people behave like the heroes that you are trying to be, then I will have no reason to do that. Izuku said, explaining on a surface level the rules of the exam, while warning them about the fact that he had the authority to fail them should he think that they weren't behaving properly. He did give them some extra information about how they would be evaluated, and after telling them that he would also participate as a way to give them an example to perform, but also someone that would also take away chances to be evaluated should they slack off, the exam started for real. Izuku saw how the participants scattered around the desolated area, and after 5 minutes, Izuku decided to move into rescuing people as well. In comparison to what he would do if this was a real situation, Izuku decided to take a leisurely pace as he paid attention to the other participants to make sure that nothing could happen. He then saw a girl with the uniform of the CI Academy who had periwinkle long hair and a monocle in one eye that was actually reaching up to him. "Sorry to bother you, Midoriya, but could you lend us a hand?" that girl said. Izuku had chosen to use his family name as a hero name. He wanted to add the doctor in front of it to show what he truly was focused on despite being a hero, but he decided to wait to become a doctor first before adding it to his hero name. "Sure, I could, but you should be aware that it could backfire on you should I lend you my help." Izuku said it was not like he didn't want to help, but this exam was for them to show what they had, and if he took charge, then he would overshadow some of them. "I acknowledge the risks, but my classmates and I are lacking in the strength department for what we need at the moment, and considering that this is an exam that is designed to make us act like rescue heroes, then asking for a more capable hero to lend a hand to rescue someone from a tight spot could be considered a logical action regardless of any potential penalty. After all, for a rescue hero, saving people's lives is their top priority," the girl said. She knew that she was taking a gamble here, but as she said, her group lacked a pair of capable and strong hands to safely remove some debris from a couple of civilians, and she would rather take the logical action of just asking for help to someone that looked capable over trying to mess things up. She had tried to ask some other participants for help, but they told her that they were only for themselves. "Fair enough, you make a solid argument there. Just tell me what you need, and I will see what I can do, but I warn you that I won't do all the job for you," Izuku said. He was willing to help her out after she gave him a valid argument for why she asked for help. But he was going to tell her that there was a limit, at least for this exam, for the help that he could give. "I understand. I just tried to ask other participants for help, but they were too busy with their own desire to be the best and ignored my request for help," the girl admitted. "I see," Izuku said. He then told the girl that he would follow her and help her for a while, but that he would let her and her group rescue the civilians. "Thank you. I'm Psycho and Tili. Thanks for your help," the girl said, happy to find that she would be able to save those civilians that were trapped in a building whose remains were close to giving up and could crush them if they weren't fast enough. Izuku knew that the HPSC had a guy with a long-distance energy barrier creation quirk on standby in case something like that could happen to the workers of the Help Us company, and even if those workers were capable of getting out of trouble themselves if needed, then it was for the best to make sure that they were rescued and not left to rot in whatever place that they had decided to put themselves to be rescued after those explosions happened. This was one of the few times that Izuku would have preferred that either robots or mannequins would be there in case something went out of the script, but it was not like he had too much power to impose that kind of change. A group of girls from the CI Academy were holding on the best they could to keep a building that was about to collapse from falling on top of those civilians that they needed to rescue. Psycho's quick thinking, thanks to her quirk, allowed them to at least combine their quirks and skills to delay the collapse of the building, but they were forced to stay there as they weren't able to leave things like that to save the injured civilians, as one bad move could start a chain reaction that could make the whole building to fall down. "What is that?" one of the girls said as some red tendrils of a liquid substance collided with the structural points of the building that they had hastily reinforced to keep the building from collapsing, and then red crystals started to emerge around those spots that fully reinforced them. "Everyone, I managed to get some help," Psycho said as she appeared alongside Izuku, who had used his quirk to envelop some of those structural points in ice, and then created some pillars of red ice to add some extra security. "I will take it from here. Go and rescue the injured civilians while I make sure that the building doesn't collapse," Izuku simply said as the girls of CI Academy moved to action, and Psycho coordinated them so they could save the civilians. Izuku saw that those girls were quite capable of working together with harmony as they saved those civilians, and Izuku was reminded a little about how Tensei did things in Ididen. After some minutes, Izuku saw that those girls managed to carry the civilians to safety, and then Psycho got close to him in order to talk to him. "Thanks for the help, Midoriya," Psycho said. "You're welcome. I just did what a hero should do in a rescue operation as long as there is not a villain nearby," Izuku admitted as he then looked at his surroundings in case a civilian needed help or someone nearby was stepping out of line. "I see, but your help was appreciated. If only some of those that I asked first were then willing to help," Psycho said in a sad tone. Her quirk may temporarily boost her intellect after drinking tea and closing her eyes, but she was unable to take into consideration emotions or things that could happen spontaneously. So for what her mind considered a sensible plan that could help everyone, the whole asking other students for help to increase their overall effectiveness when saving people, she found out that almost everyone that she asked was only for their own benefit and was going to do things on their own no matter what and not share the spotlight with anyone else but themselves. A pity, but that is unfortunately the result of what this hero-focused society teaches us as kids. We almost only saw heroes going solo when fighting villains on TV at the moment that it happened, but when the situation is a disaster like the Tokyo incident of a couple months ago, or what happened in Nagano, those cameras are almost unavailable and people only get the aftermath of what happened there in the news almost in a passing manner. Heroism at this point is less that noble calling and more like an attractive job for those that want to make an easy living. But enough about my opinions on the state of this world. We had an exam to do, Izuku said, not trying to rant about the state of the hero society when it was unwarranted. He then waved his goodbyes to her and her classmates before he moved away to do his part. But his words made a strong impression on Psycho. Psycho heard what Izuku said, and while what he had said was somewhat thought-provoking, she knew that she needed to get her priorities straight. This exam came first, and she would have all the time to contemplate his words later. "What the?" Izuku said as he saw multiple lumps of flesh around a building, and then he saw how a participant with the Shiketsu High School iconic hat was attacking some participants with strange lumps of flesh that, when it attached to its opponents, caused his victims to turn into those lumps of flesh that he had seen before. "None of you are worthy of being here," that boy with the Shiketsu hat said. Izuku heard that from a distance, and then he was able to see that his next victims were Class 1A from you, that boy said as Izuku realized the identity of his next victims. Izuku then saw how that boy's arm started to lose some flesh as it detached from his arms, and said flesh suddenly started to fly in order to reach his ex-classmates. "All of you have been a disappointment and a stain on what it means to be a hero, so it's time to make sure that none of you can't succeed in this exam." The students of Class 1A that passed the first phase now were together, trying to not lose focus and to try to dodge that flying flesh as they had seen what would happen to them if they were hit by that. All of them had seen how that boy out of nowhere started to use his quirk to turn one participant who was going solo into a literal meatball, and when Momo Yarazu tried to call him out from attacking a participant when the exam was now about rescuing people, that boy turned on them and tried to get rid of him. They had managed to run away from him, but he had also targeted some other participants who were going solo along the way, and they were exhausted. They were bracing for the worst, as they were almost expecting something wrong to happen to them, but then they saw multiple red tendrils that appeared from one side of that desolate street that tied up those flying lumps of flesh, and then they were stunned into silence. That same kid that they had mocked and belittled before he cut ties with them and went to the general course, only to become a hero anyway, was there. And for the first time, he was actually saving them. "What the hell do you think that you are doing?" Izuku said. From the tips of his fingers, those tendrils of blood were emerging, and that was what was keeping those lumps of flesh restrained. "It's you," that boy said. He only saw Izuku once, and that was the day that the written test to get the license was done in their school at the same time that he was doing the final exams before the summer, and he in a way considered that those that skipped the hero course to become heroes were unfit to be heroes. "I will repeat myself. What do you think that you are doing?" Izuku said. He was staring at the boy now, a little sure that he was a little older than him, but he was trying to understand why he believed that reducing the number of people who could participate in this exam was a good idea. "I don't owe you an explanation, but if you must know, I am thinning the herd here. Far too many people that are unworthy had passed the previous exam, and I know that those people shouldn't be allowed to succeed in this test. Izuku heard those words and was remembering that there was a particular nutcase that was dogmatic and obsessed with the worthiness of a person to be a hero to the point that if you weren't literally All Might, then you deserve to die. Okay then, Stain Jr., you have made your point. But who the hell are you to decide that you are the absolute authority about who deserves to be a hero or not? Izuku said. It was clear that his words had rattled that boy somewhat, as the look in his eyes was quite intense. Huh. I know better about heroism than someone that had quit the hero course to then skip it by doing an exam to become hero does. You are a disgrace and unfit to even be a hero as well, that boy said, and then sent more lumps of his flesh in his direction to attack him. But more tendrils of blood emerged from his fingers that tied up those incoming lumps of flesh, and then Izuku simply glared at the boy before taking a deep breath. You are disqualified. Abandon the examination area now before I call for some other heroes that are in the area to remove you from here, Izuku coldly said to the boy, and by the look on his face, it appeared that he didn't see that coming. What? You can't do that. Izuku looked at how that boy looked at him like he had done something terrible in front of his eyes. I can. I am part of the group of heroes that are helping with this exam, and the HPSC gave me the power to disqualify participants in case I felt that it was necessary. You had not only turned your quirk against other participants when it was not only unwarranted, but also a foolish action, as this is a rescue operation and all, but name, and only an idiot would decide to take out other heroes in a situation that a lot of working hands are needed, but you also attacked a hero when he asked you why where. You doing this after spewing words similar to a villain that killed heroes for not being All Might. Izuku said. That boy got really pissed off about that fact and tried to foolishly attack Izuku again, but then a hypersonic wave came from behind that boy, and then he felt unconscious as the sound of that sonic wave made him lose his consciousness. Izuku saw that and knew that Gang Orca had decided to step in from a distance in order to not give up his position, as it wasn't the time yet for him to intervene. Izuku would have to thank the man for the help after the end of this exam. What is going on? Ida Tenya said, looking at the boy that his older brother had taken under his wing and became a hero thanks to his help, that made him jealous in a way, but he accepted that his behavior in that week was unbecoming of a hero and tried to move forward. Can't say much, but I will take this boy out of the examination area, so he can face the music for his actions. There are drones with cameras recording this exam, and they have caught this act of villainy of his, Izuku said. He then grabbed the unconscious boy and carried him on top of his shoulder. He wasn't going to reveal that Gang Orca was going to be in the area to cause some trouble as a villain in a couple of minutes. What should we do now? Momo asked, unsure about what she should do now. The events of those past months had definitely damaged her confidence in herself, and the lack of chances for her to get her footing back wasn't helping her or the others to get their shit together. A lot of those participants that were attacked by this guy are starting to recover from that transformation into meatballs. You should at least make sure that they are fine before moving to continue with this rescue operation, Izuku said. They were not his problem, and he had no reason to give them a hand at all. But at this point, Izuku decided to give them a small hand by telling them a way to proceed. It was up to them to decide what to do next, but it was not like it was going to hurt him to just giving them a freebie before parting ways. Izuku had a lot of time to cool off since the events of the first week in UA, and maybe it was because Izuku was too busy with his part-time job, his hero job, and his plans to continue his studies. But Izuku decided that he had nothing to gain by still holding a grudge against them. He wasn't going to do what he did with Kanoko and the others by offering his help, and even try to think a way to help them even if that took his free time out of his own will. But if they asked for his help, then maybe Izuku would consider helping them, because it was clear that they needed all the help that they could get. In one room in which some employees were overseeing the exam thanks to those drones, there was a lanky middle-aged man who was taking a deep breath as he saw what happened when Seiji Shishikura, the boy that had turned all those other participants into meatballs with his quirk, decided to throw this exam and maybe his future as a hero, when he not only decided to incapacitate and turn all those participants into meatballs, but also decided to try to attack Izuku, and was then incapacitated from a distance by Gang Orca when Izuku rightfully disqualified Seiji from the exam for his actions. One of the reasons that they wanted to test Izuku to see how he behaved should he was given that kind of power to see if he slipped up, so they could find a way to coerce him into compliance. But Izuku had shown to be a reasonable person that refused to use that power to screw the students of Class 1A, and the only time that he had used that privilege to kick a participant from this test, it had been used in a way that only a deluded person would consider it a misuse of that privilege. There was still one last card to play for them to try to find an angle of attack to force Izuku into compliance, but they believed that it was a really risky move. There was one hero who had a bone to pick up with Izuku, and while the hero took the chance to participate in this exam to get an excuse to fight Izuku, the HPSC considered that said hero had the same chance of fighting Izuku and causing trouble that fighting Izuku and making peace with the boy. They just hoped that she would pull through and that her issues with Izuku would further their agenda. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Had Blood Manipulation Quirk. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to Judas Magnus 1994 for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on archiveofourown.org for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Zenin Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.